Hello, it is Rachel, and I can tell you, and you probably won't be surprised to hear that one of the most common questions I get is, how do I get my kids to listen? And I know from having worked with so many families and helped so many families get their kids to listen, that there are three main reasons that kids don't listen to begin with. And one of the main reasons is that our expectations are not realistic. Because very honestly, if you think about it, if you're being honest with yourself, we set expectations based on what we want our kids to do, not what they are capable of doing. So we may set expectations like stop fighting with your brother or sister, or sit still when you're in school, or turn in your schoolwork on time, or stop being so dramatic when you're getting off of your device. These are all things we want them to do, but they're not necessarily capable of doing this. Are they physically capable? Sure, but they may not be developmentally capable. Remember that the mature, responsible part of the brain does not fully develop until the mid-20s. So often we're asking our kids to do things that they're simply not mature enough to be able to do. So how can you tell if a rule is realistic? A simple question you can ask yourself to figure this out is, has my child been able to do the thing that I'm asking them to do consistently on a very frequent basis in the past? If the answer is no, chances are it's not realistic to expect them to be able to do that going forward. So if you say to your kids, stop fighting while I'm making dinner, but most of the time in the past they've been fighting while you're making dinner, chances are that they aren't realistically going to be able to do that in the future. Now, if you find that your rule or boundary isn't realistic, I don't want you to give up on it. Obviously, it's fine to say to your kids, sit still during school or stop fighting while I'm making dinner. What you want to do instead, though, is say to yourself, well, it may not be realistic now. It will be realistic when I handle the problem or the reason they're not doing what they're supposed to do now. So what you really want to think about is, why might they not be doing that now? And I'm going to give you some tips for how you can figure that out. And then I'm going to give you some examples of what this might look like. So the first thing you want to think about is, what is the pattern that's happening here? So obviously, if your children are always fighting while you're making dinner, that is an issue that needs to be addressed. Chances are they need something to do while you are making dinner so that they're not fighting with each other so much. Bored children will often fight. That's the problem. However, if you solve it by helping them find something to engage themselves, you're going to see less fighting, and that becomes more realistic. So look for some patterns. It may also be true, for example, your child resists when you ask them to brush their teeth. Well, if it's always happening at bedtime, it's possible that they're actually really tired at bedtime and they're less cooperative when they're tired. So maybe you need to move up the brushing teeth to earlier in the evening, right after dinner, not during bedtime. So always think about the timing, think about patterns, and that can help you as well. Another thing you can think about is just simply getting into your children's shoes. Trying to see what it's like from their perspective can also help you figure out what the problem is. So for example, if you say to your child, sit still during school, let's say they're doing virtual learning or even in-person learning, you say sit still during school, what's it like for them to have to sit still? Do they get easily distracted? Do they get easily bored so they're trying to find something else to do? Try to think about what it's like for them. You can even ask them what makes it hard. And when they tell you why they hate school so much, that's going to tell you what the problem is and what they need to learn in order for this expectation to be more realistic. So if they need a little bit more engagement to focus, I've actually done a podcast episode on this. I will link to it below the video. If they need more engagement, you solve that problem and the expectation becomes more realistic. So I want you to ask yourself, have they been able to do this on a regular basis in the past? If not, just say to yourself, this will be more realistic when we solve the problem. So if you want even more information about setting realistic expectations, I encourage you to check out my latest podcast episode. You can find it on my website, rachel-bailey.com/67. I'll see you again soon.